Ooh, check that shit out, man, the internet. Let's see if those wrote something new about us or that stupid-ass flick.
Something you want to add to this briefing, Captain Hiller?
No, sir. Just a little anxious to get up there and whoop E.T.'s ass, that's all.
All right, look. There's only one return, okay? And it ain't of the king, it's of the Jedi.
That man is playing Galaga. Thought we wouldn't notice, but we did.
I'm running this monkey farm now, Frankenstein, and I want to know what the you're doing with my time.
Would you like to know more?
As a city, we continue to grow. 73 citizen riots. Come and get us! Throw down your weapons and prepare to be judged! Judge this! Court's adjourned. Dredd, you're a legend. You were my finest student. Get Dredd! Dredd, you're under arrest.
What's the charge?
Murder. The evidence has been falsified. Guilty as charged.
800 million people living in the ruin of the old world. Only one thing fighting for order in the chaos. The men and women of the Hall of Justice.
Peachtree's is the manufacturing base for all the slow-mo in Mega City 1.
You know how often we get a judge up in Peachtree's?
Well, you got one now.
Greetings, citizens of this Mega City 1 endorsed podcast. I am your street judge for the evening. Actually, you know what? I'm going to give myself a promotion. Chief Justice Mike the Birdman, but I'm joined with my fellow street judges from their own mega blocks around the world. This is Future Imperfect, joined from the lovely mega block of Kitchener. We are joined with
Alex, the producer.
And, well, since they're arguably the smartest guy that we podcast with, I'm going to say this guy would pretty much be our law professor from Lansing, Michigan.
Yeah, I'm from the part of the Earth that's the cursed Earth now. I'm Aaron Pollyea.
Yes, guys, we are here on Future Imperfect. This is the show on Twig where we talk about all things science, science fiction, and maybe even some real life stuff occasionally. So yes, if you haven't guessed it so far, we're going to be talking about yet another exciting double feature. And this one is one I'm actually really glad we're getting a chance to actually kind of chat about. We're going to be talking about the two Judge Dredd movies we have so far. We have Judge Dredd from 1995 starring Sylvester Stallone, and then Dredd from 2012 starring Carl Urban. Yeah, this is a franchise. Surprisingly, I haven't actually read a lot of the comics, but I've actually done a lot with the supplementary media with it as well. So most often we kind of go around the table, kind of get everybody's initial how they got involved with the franchise. I'll start to give these guys a little bit of a moment to get their thoughts together. So way back when, in the tender year of 1995, I do remember seeing Judge Dredd in theaters. And I remember this really, really clearly because at that time, Adam Sandler was still really hot, and so was Rob Schneider. So when you put Rob Schneider into something, typically it would translate, into some kind of box office buzz because of his appearances on Saturday Night Live, working with all the Sandler crew, whatever. I think I was listening to the Adam Sandler CD at that time, so obviously I was into that type of humor. I was a dorky kid. But my local theater had picked up, I think it was Owen Sound Cinemas 3 at this time. It hadn't become Cinemas 5 yet before it was tore down and rebuilt into the galaxy that is now there today. But I remember seeing this. So 95, I was probably just going into high school at this time, and I'd seen the trailers for Judge Dredd, and again, I was big into Sylvester Stallone, but I hadn't seen a Rambo movie, but I had seen stuff like, I think it was Cliffhanger at the time. Demolition Man would be coming out soon if it hadn't been earlier that year. But anyway, so I went to go see this. And again, I'd never really seen a cyberpunk movie because I don't think Johnny Mnemonic was till like a couple of years later. And went into this and just was utterly blown away because, again, I'd never seen really good sci-fi on the big screen. Like, a lot of the stuff I'd seen would be like kind of kid-oriented stuff. I'd seen like Star Wars, but that was always at home on the small screen. So this was a really big experience for me. And then again, the thing that really captured me with Judge Dredd back in 95 was what everything looked like. And even going back and revisiting the movie last night as of this recording, I really have to give it to set design. I really have to give it to costume design and props in this movie. In fact, I was writing on my Letterboxd account last night that this is still my favorite representation of the lawgiver, which is Judge Dredd's iconic weapon. And this is probably my favorite version of the street judge armor, but only for street judges, but not for Judge Dredd himself, if that makes any kind of sense. Basically, if they were meant to be like cannon fodder street judges, I'd be fine with it. But anyway, saw this in theaters, loved it, had the Super Nintendo game, and I remember for a couple of months, it was kind of a hot thing. I remember picking up a magazine in a Cole's Books that talked about British toys, and they talked about 2000 AD, which is the comic where Judge Dredd originally came from, and they would talk about, you know, the history of Judge Dredd, the mutants, I think even some of the storylines that were going on at the time. And again, it was something that I had no experience with. I mean, to be very frank and be kind of giving away my small town ignorance, I didn't know comics were made outside of North America at this time. I had no idea that there were like British comics. Japanese manga was still remarkably new to me. So yeah, again, this was something new. This was something different. This wasn't Spider-Man. This wasn't the X-Men. This was people getting dispatched in very violent manners. Though the Judge Dredd movie would not be representation really of what Judge Dredd is supposed to be, it turned more into, I knew you'd say that, another goofy bullshit. But I had a good time with it. But does the movie hold up? Well, we'll kind of get to that. So I'm going to throw things over to Aaron. And what was your first experience with Judge Dredd 1995?
Well, my first experience with Judge Dredd overall was actually with the comics, just because of being exposed during Doctor Who conventions before the movie came out. Because there was a lot of comics being brought over from the UK at those conventions, and okay, well, what's this? This is weird. It's interesting. Oh, they're making a movie. Well, that's cool. I saw the movie in the theaters. I enjoyed it. Loved it. I don't know. I didn't think that it fit the feel of the comics that well.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense. But I liked that the movie felt comic book-ish. Now I can go into the 2012 Dredd, which is different if you want me to, if that's okay.
We will get there, but give us a tease.
I was really excited, mainly because all of the production stuff made it look and feel a lot more like the comics, even though it was far less comic book visually, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
so there's really a very large difference between the two movies.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's something that both are relics of their time, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I found the Dredd 2012 leans more into realistic and practical, like the Lawmasters don't fly. Even the lawgiver makes a little bit more sense. I think it's just like a dressed up SIG, maybe a Glock. I'm not 100% sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, all right, it's not like as goofy as the Judge Dredd thing. Like, and their armor makes a hell of a lot more sense other than just here's some Kevlar shoulder pads. Good luck, kid. And yeah, it was just like, But yeah, I completely agree with what you said there. Like, it nailed some things and didn't nail other things. But definitely we're going to get to that, because this may be just a very broad discussion of both kind of movies here, because the both are very different in their approaches and story and what they're actually adapting. So we're going to finish things off with Street Judge Alex. What did you think?
Well, for some reason, In my head, was under the impression that this was like a cartoon first, growing up.
Mm-hmm.
So it might have just been. It was. I think that I had played and rented the Super Nintendo game
Mm-hmm.
with friends a bunch, and in my head, I didn't know it was a comic book because I wasn't somebody who really went to comic book stores at the time, and if I did, it wasn't to check out, expensive, mature European comics. It would have been, whatever X-Men comic was out at the time. Because the movie came out when I was like 8 years old, something like that. So for me, it just sort of fit into the, the superhero-y type movies that were happening at the time. Like as a kid, and again, because you know how your memories can be malleable and things merge together. In my head, I thought when I rented this on VHS, I thought this was going to be a sequel to Demolition Man, simply
See that.
because it was the same lead actor and Rob Schneider was in it as well because he was in Demolition Man. So I was just like, oh, so is this the sequel? Is this Demolition Man 2? Like that was my thought before watching it. And then of course, it's vastly different. But to say something to what Aaron was saying before, as far as the looking like a comic book, this to me is the movie that looks the most like an actual like comic book outside of the Tim Burton Batman movies.
Yeah, I can see
I
that.
can see that. Yeah, same. Yeah.
Like where the world looks like a living comic. And that's really the praise I can remember as a kid, thinking like, this does look like, Batman, in quote unquote, as the way the world was built. Whereas obviously the remake or the reimagining sequel, whatever you want to call it, is much more grounded and more maybe how you would actually live in that world versus. Beyond that, I played a bunch of the pinball game of all things.
Really?
The local arcade had one of the pinball machines. So I think it was probably Midway or somebody or Bally. Somebody must have put it out. But it
Bally,
was. I remember it was actually pretty popular, and I think there was a PlayStation 1 game that my friends and I rented right around that time. It might have come out. The game probably came out a year later, but that was something that we played. And to me, this is one of the more at the time. I watch the movie, forget about it. I was probably more invested in the video game than I was in the movie as a kid, at least. And that's pretty much my memories of it. That, and I just remember it being a big flop. I remember them talking about it being a flop on television.
Yeah, like I remember when this came out, this was supposed to be like a huge like Stallone summer experience, and it did not live up to expectations. Like this was this Diane Ladd? Was this the
Diane Lane.
actress? Lane. I always
Yeah.
get those two mixed up. I actually had this conversation with our mutual friend Liam last night. Like, why do I get these two women mixed up? That he's like Mike Martha. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, so this is Martha Kent from the Superman franchise, from the later DC things. I'm like, oh, okay, now I recognize her. But
basically, one is a generation younger than the other.
yeah, and like when you look at Judge Dredd as a whole, like you're right. This was supposed to be I guess, kind of the next stepping stone to like, because comic book movies, yeah, we'd had a couple, like we'd had the Batmans, then things got a little bit different with Batman Forever. And then obviously we got to the more extreme with Batman and Robin with Schumacher in 97.
Basically, everybody went kind of nutty after the success of Batman and Batman Returns, and they were greenlighting everything, and it was all like not just comic books like this, it was like comic strips. Think about all the ones that failed that were originally comic strips around this time in like a 3-year period.
The Phantom, the Shadow.
The Phantom, the Shadow. There's at least 2 or 3 more that I can think of, and then there's the
Spawn.
Roger Corman Fantastic Four from Roger Corman that was made just to be shelved. You have, I think there was at least one more Superman and Spider-Man project that were in the works that failed to, materialize. There was a bunch, and this was like seen, I think, at the time as, well, this can't fail because it's got one of the biggest moneymaker people in the world in it. So like they, instead of casting, maybe somebody who was not an action star in it, or was, a different body type, they were like, well, let's just put one of our guys in. Arnold wasn't going to do it at this point because he hadn't signed on yet, I don't think, for Batman. But like, this was still, when this was signed for, at least, this was peak action hero era, right? Like, they were just expecting this was going to make like $200 million or more.
Yeah.
And I think this was like one of the first big wake up calls where they're like, wait a minute, no, the movie, it can't just be any movie.
I actually just had a thought when you were kind of speaking there. So I'd love to hear, I guess, our panel's thoughts on this. I wonder if Judge Dredd fell so Men in Black could run. And what I mean by that is Men in Black was a fairly obscure comic book, and then it became a monster hit mega franchise, but it also had the right alignment of stars, had the right special effects, and it was interesting at the time.
Go ahead, Alex. Go first.
My initial thoughts, first thing that came in my head was, that's a movie that was centered around the premise of comedy first. Whereas this was another action movie with action movie comedy. Not like this movie could have been, take away the Judge Dredd part, and it's just any other, Stallone, Arnie, kind of movie. They just painted it with Dredd, if that makes any sense.
My thought on this is that Men in Black and Judge Dredd are two completely different animals that you can't really compare. Mainly because Judge Dredd was written to be serious, and Stallone changed it on set to be funny and tried to force comedy into it for some reason. And Men in Black was intended to be funny from the start. And the entire concept of it was centered around people that could be funny. Have you seen a Stallone film where he's honestly funny?
Stop or my mom will shoot.
Wait, I was gonna say, intentionally funny?
Intentionally.
Tango and Cash, maybe?
No, it's not him. That's
true.
That's not on him. That's everybody else that might have funny moments. And don't you dare try to say that he could be just as funny as, any of his other action co-stars.
No.
He really doesn't have that. Arnold has an actual sense of humor. You've never seen Stallone ever appear to have a real sense of humor.
He gets funny one-liners, but he can't carry a comedy script.
If you look at his interviews, he thinks he's funny. Nobody else thinks he's funny. Arnold is actually funny, and people are usually surprised that he's funny.
The director for the Judge Dredd even said in interviews that he was really pissed with Stallone, just constantly changing things. He called him a self-absorbed actor, and said that he'd never work with him again, that he completely changed the tone of the movie. It wasn't supposed to be so funny. There was supposed to be a couple jokes in it, but it was like dark humor. And what you got was basically this wishy-washy, yeah, it's supposed to be funny, but you can tell that it's sort of forced. Like Rob Schneider in it, he has a couple good laughs, like when he's just mocking Sylvester Stallone, but like, is it supposed to be funny that he's hiding inside the robot and he's covered in food?
That's actually one of the moments I really kind of think that's like kind of funny to me. Just like, the servo droid is your friend. Please let your friend by. That always kind of gets me. But yeah, it is kind of goofy. He's covered in like ramen for some reason.
I think the issue is, if they wanted to make it funny, you have to know what target you're going at, what age demographic, right?
Yeah,
like, is this
RoboCop
a movie for kids?
Funny. Yeah,
it's Super Mario Brothers the movie all over again. What's the tone?
Mm-hmm.
What's the tone? Who's it for? It doesn't mean that it's not enjoyable. I enjoyed watching it, and having not seen it in 20 some odd years, watching it, I'm like, oh, this is fun. It's this is the kind of fun disaster where you're like, oh, I see why it didn't make money, but I still think it should have made more money.
Yeah. I mean, it was enjoyable. The special effects were really cool. I like that they made the robot, like, what his name is, Hammerstein. They made him like actually practical with hydraulics and everything. That's really cool. Good
And
job.
there's a ton of really good actors in this movie too.
Yeah, like actually to speak to Aaron talking about the robot, the ABC or the atomic biological chemical robot, I want to say that actually came up for auction recently. At least within the last couple of years, I seem to recall one of the heritage auction sites or one of the big movie prop houses putting some stuff up from Judge Dredd fairly recently. I mean, one thing that's one of the more well-known trivia bits about Judge Dredd 1995 is that the armor was designed by Gianni Versace, which is a choice, but I kind of dig it in that regard because, like Aaron said, like a lot of the practical stuff in this looks really good. Like the future looks like how it's supposed to look, and this is something I didn't pick up until last night when I was watching this. When Rob's character of what the fuck's the character's name?
Yeah, I don't know.
Fergie.
Yeah. Unfunny douchebag. That's what I always think of.
Douchebag.
So when who is extremely bitter and just not a nice person in real life.
So when Fergie goes to his new place in Heavenly Haven, I was going to call it Peace Trees, but that's Dredd. He goes in there and he goes into the apartment and all the guys are having the huge block war, which is basically when civil war breaks down on a block and then the judges have to come in and sweep things up. He goes in there and he opens the door and one of the guys screams Drock. And you might be saying, what the fuck does that mean? Drock is a curse word in Dredd, or in the Dredd kind of universe. And not too often can a movie get away or a television series with using their own kind of curses. I think the most well-known was Frack from Battlestar Galactica. And
Farscape would like to have a word with you, Drell.
I've actually never seen Farscape.
What?
Oh, dude, that.
Oh my God.
Okay. Project time. I know we were trying to get you to watch.
Wow.
I know we were trying to get you to watch all the Stargate stuff, but
I got 4 seasons in, to be fair.
But wait. You have to watch Farscape because half of the cast joins and becomes part of Stargate.
Dude, Farscape is so good. I mean,
Farscape, they to get away with what they wanted to get away with. The Frelling is the F word. Drell. They had like entire phrases for 4 seasons where characters from whatever planet they came from had their own swear words, and they never told you what they meant, but you would get it. And then by the end of the series, in your head, sometimes you'd be saying those swear words because they were that catchy. But yeah,
like
dude, there's an episode of Stargate where it's in episode 200 where they're coming up with ideas for their own television show, and one of them is Farscape, and it's all the actors playing different roles than they actually played in Farscape, and then they are using all the fake swear words in Stargate.
Okay, so, I may have to seriously sit down and
you want to talk about meta, but yes, sorry for the tangent, but yeah, whenever a friend of ours, or mine at least, says they haven't seen Farscape, that's a trigger warning right there.
Yeah. I'll start getting into it too. I'll start going, oh my God, you just don't understand how cool that show is. And
that is a project show for us for sure. We will touch back on that at some point.
Absolutely. But yeah, like that's one of the little attentions to detail that caught me. And I was also watching in the background, that's looking for little things. Like I see them talk about Pleasure City domes or sections or whatever. There's one reference in, I think this is more in Dredd than it is in Judge Dredd, but I'm pretty sure they both share this one. In their world, they have a fetishization of fat people called fatties, where people feed big people, and that's sort of a thing that is a thing in reality now, which is disturbing.
Everything. I should say this: everything in this movie, but this franchise, you can tell it is a British person's interpretation from afar of
America.
American culture in the future. And and as a Canadian seeing it, it's like I see what the Europeans are getting at. And I know it's tongue in cheek, and that's part of it, but at the same time, there is almost an earnestness to like it's like when you watch or you listen to music and it's somebody who's not a native English speaker, but they wrote the lyrics in English, and you're like, that seems a little off. Why would you use that inflection, or why is that turn of phrase being used? That's not how we would normally use that. That is what I get when I get this, and just think, calling people fatties, that is a very British thing to say, and that's not how actual Americans would say it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like it's so strange, but it was just like, again, just little attentions to detail. Even when Judge Rico, who's played by Armand Asante, is walking down the street, they're very elaborate costumes, but they're obviously just picking people who look interesting. There's people who are presenting as a different gender than what they are, people who are like kind of street punky sort of things. But to Aaron's point and yours, Alex, this feels like Mega City 1. Like it really nails the part. And I think movies in the 90s specifically really hit this well. Like you're mentioning the Batman. This feels like it's happening in universe. Like one change, because I know Judge Dredd adapted a story from the Dredd comics. I'm not precisely sure which one, but I remember reading something on one of the Judge Dredd wikis. I was reading about Judge Rico, and he wasn't sent to the Aspen Penal Colony. I think he was sent to something like Titan or something. So space travel is fairly common in the Judge Dredd kind of universe, at least within solar system. And they were like, well, we don't want to give you an environment suit because we don't want to spend the money on you. And we want you to be a more efficient worker. So instead, we're going to replace part of your face with like a rebreather, and we're going to chemically treat your skin so you can survive the harshness of near vacuum, or at least a harsher environment than Earth. And I was kind of annoyed we didn't get at least like the Titan Penal Colony or whatever, but we got Aspen, so that's fine. They always talk about being sent to the ISO cubes, which is a very small prison cell you'll spend multiple years of your life.
That would have made the difference between the $90 million budget it had and $200 million. If having to build out that much, this is not the age of Marvel and Disney putting out ridiculous amounts of money, or Warner Brothers. This is 20 years before they started doing that kind of stuff, right? Where they were building entire worlds in CG.
Yeah, like the only other movie that I think feels comic booky and somewhat otherworldly would be The Fifth Element, which would come about 2 years later. But that was done by French director Luc Besson, and that looked that definitely had a very distinct visual style.
I'd argue it's a much more solid film.
Oh, for 100% sure. Which that's a franchise. That's something I'm actually surprised never was franchised.
You know what?
I'm kind of glad it wasn't.
It's great. We love it. It's the best way to describe it is it's too French for it to ever be big enough in the States on a mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've played video games and you'll play it and you'll go, wait a minute, this is French. And you could tell, like, I'll be like, not even just the dialogue. I'll be like, the art, the aesthetic, the feel, like, this is French. I know it's French. And I'll look it up and be like, yep, made. And, and there's a difference between, Canadian French and Parisian. You can tell when it's Parisian French.
Yeah.
when they made a game or they make a movie, it's very distinct. And it's hard to even describe. It's got a je ne sais quoi. You can't really tell what it is, but it's there. And if somebody was like, what's this? You show them that and they go, oh, that's France, the sci-fi right there. It just has that off-kilter quirkiness. And this, doesn't have that to that extent. This still feels very American, but it also feels like an American thing created by somebody who's not in America.
Yeah,
I want to say one last thing about my thoughts on the original Judge Dredd.
Yeah.
Yes.
I actually think that the comic bookiness of it, what seemingly is closest to the comic books, actually hinders the movie. Mainly because a lot of the Judge Dredd humor comes out of dark place, like dark humor. And the bright kind of cyberpunky visuals, all that, the comic booky type stuff, the over the top costumes tends to work against the dark humor in a lot of ways, and it changes the tone of the film. So like that might work, that style in general might work in a black and white comic, which most of Judge Dredd was, except for the covers. But like when you put in huge amounts of bright colors into it, it really changes the entire tone of the film. And that's in my opinion, it's the weaker of the two films.
I wonder if they had shot and lit it the way, let's say, like Alex Proyas did with The Crow or Dark City.
Mm-hmm.
If you had the costumes with the color, but then had it all lit, all grimy and dim, do you think that would have worked better?
It might have. I mean, Dark City is a very stylish movie.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it would have worked, let's say, with the style of Sin City. I don't think that would have.
No, yeah.
But yeah, like just a very noir feel, dark, grimy. Yeah, it might have been better, but again, I don't think it would have appealed to audiences as much as, the regular version did.
Especially not in 95, right?
Yeah,
because this is
exactly. But looking back on it, you can kind of see how, at least I can see why the film just doesn't feel right in a lot of ways.
Yeah, like especially because we know when stuff gets adapted, it either nails the source material or it doesn't. Like you mentioned The Crow. When I found out about some of the casting choices originally for The Crow, like they wanted to have Johnny Depp, they wanted to have Christian Slater, and Brandon Lee was kind of brought in as a last minute sort of thing. I think he did something in Little China or Little Tokyo. Maybe Alex, you know what I'm talking about?
At that point, he had done like the Kung Fu TV movie, and then he did the one Hong Kong film. He had done Laser Mission, Rapid Fire, and Big Trouble. Oh no, Showdown in Little Tokyo with Dolph Lundgren. That's what it was.
So when the director for The Crow had let him do a thing for it, he's like, all right, let's see what you can do. And he really brought an earnestness to the Eric Draven character. When you look at Stallone as Judge Joseph Dredd, does he look the part? Yes. But the second he takes off the helmet, you lose part of what makes Dredd a character. You need that faceless lawman. You need to project. Yes, you have that era of hyper masculinity, but Judge Dredd is impartial. He is the law.
And he can't use the excuse of, sometimes they'll say you have to show your face because of contracts for how it works with the union. That's bullshit. This was ego trip. I got to show my face because this is a comic book. The comic book's not important. I'm the important aspect. I'm in this film.
Yeah, and that's what a lot has come out, because I think Joe Blow did a video on this at some point in recent memory, and they were talking about this, and as Aaron mentioned, the director had a lot of problems with this, and when you give Judge Dredd that much personality, you imprint too much on him, and it takes away what he's supposed to be, and you really lose a lot of the story. And while the story in Judge Dredd isn't particularly great, basically involves recreating the street judges from someone else who wants to control them, wiping out independent thought. Judge Rico is Judge Dredd's brother, wants revenge, blah, blah, blah. And this was a story adapted in the comics, but it took a radically different turn from what I understand. It just doesn't work. And again, with Stallone saying me, you're being an actor, and that's wonderful. I'm glad you got your payday, but you're not telling the story as true to the source material. Whereas someone like, say, Peter Weller,
he hams it up to like Jean-Claude Van Damme levels of like Street Fighter. Everything in this people remember mostly are just the over the top lines that he delivered.
Yeah. Well, see, when I watched it in the theater in 95, like it was funny, right? But like rewatching it now, I roll my eyes at some of those lines.
And it was also in that we were in the midst of, the big boom for Hollywood when it came to, these big productions. So when you're in the thick of it and it's new and there isn't a lot of other things that, this we didn't realize that it was already past this prime with the style of movie already. Had the movie come out in 1990, I feel like it might have been better received.
Yeah.
But also you were saying like, him not being funny and Tango and Cash, you should have just, if you wanted to, you could have just had Kurt Russell do it. He would have made a better Dredd. He would have probably not cared if they showed his face or not.
I'm wondering if that would have worked actually.
Well, because right after this, he went and did Soldier.
Yeah, that's true.
He got in really good shape, and in that one, he barely talks. He may as well not even be in the movie. You know what I mean? Like he does. Yes, they showed his face, but there wasn't really the same kind of ego there. There would not have been the same ego. And the only reason I thought of that was when you're saying Tango Cash. Well, one of those two actors is funny, naturally, and personable, and the other one does some pretty cool action movies and thinks he's funny, and it's Stallone.
Yeah, and it's such an interesting, I guess, kind of yin and yang to all this. I mean, to wrap up thoughts on Dredd 1990 or Judge Dredd 1995, I think it's worth watching. It's definitely a fun little movie. Just it's not as representative as it could be. It's a nice slice of the 1990s, and it's interesting to see where comic movies from their primordial ooze into what they are now. Whether they're good or bad, that's up to selective taste.
And a great cast. You do have Stallone, Armand Asante, Diane Lane, Rob Schneider, Jürgen Prochnow, which again, he was starting to pop up in more and more American productions. Like, people forget that dude was like a really celebrated dramatic actor, and then he started doing he started popping up in cheesy stuff like this.
I found out he did an Arnold Schwarzenegger TV movie recently. Yeah, in like 2002 or 2004, he played a young Arnold or something. I think he's
older than Arnold though.
Yeah, it was weird. I was talking with like Liam, and like he looked this up.
Wait. You're thinking there's a movie called Young Arnold, and I think he's playing the father of him. So
or some
that's
shit
probably
like
what
that,
it was. But Max von Sydow, in this. Joan Chen's a great actress. And then as far as like some other people that pop up, Adrienne Barbeau is a voice of was it the Hall of Justice computer?
Mm-hmm.
I had to look up on Wikipedia because I'm like, I know that voice. I know where do I know that voice? I know that voice. And her. And then James Earl Jones, does the narration. That's kind of unmistakable, right? So. But yeah, it's like, good cast, especially for that time period.
Yeah, 100%. So we're going to switch things up to Dredd 2012. And this is a movie I saw in a medium-sized theater, a smaller one, but still modern equipment. I remember being really excited for this because, again, the previous 1995 version. But by this time, I think when I used to help produce a podcast that was one of the first actual play podcasts that I'm actually aware of. These Warriors Are Terrible before it got rebranded to Terrible Warriors. Judge Dredd was one of the games that we played very, very early on. And I seem to recall, I want to say it was because of Dredd 2012 that we really got into it. Like I said, I may have my time slightly skewed. But going into this, I had known Carl Urban, the guy who plays Dredd, as the guy from Star Trek 2009. I might have seen him in one or two other things. I think Star Trek In the Darkness had come out 2011, I want to say.
I knew him from Xena.
Oh, shit. Yeah, I had no fucking clue.
He was one of those guys that popped up on all those syndicated action shows made in New Zealand. Basically,
wow.
if you're somebody from Australia or New Zealand and you're an action star or a movie star now, at some point you were in that.
So going into this is when 3D was all over everything. Every movie was Dredd 3D or Avengers 3D or whatever. Like you couldn't escape it. So yeah, I saw Dredd in 3D, and I'll say this about it. Is the 3D necessary? No. Does it add to it with the slow-mo sequences? Actually, quite a bit. I was actually very surprised how non-distracting it was. And I'm thinking, all right, this is actually not a half bad use of 3D. Did I mind paying the extra $5 for the ticket? whatever, but still, I had a good time. And the way Carl Urban committed to this, some of the stories that have come out, he wouldn't break character. He would always wear the helmet. It was always about, I'm going to give you the best possible product that I can. I really want this to be successful. And in the interviews he's done since, there's always been the rumored, is Amazon going to do a Dredd TV show? I know, again, recently those rumors have popped up again. It's not going to happen, which was really depressing. But this became the iconic portrayal of Dredd, yet this movie bombed. And it is such a tragedy because it has the action, it's got the actors in it to make it really solid, it's got great direction, set design, like it looks the part. And they've even redone a lot of how Mega City 1 looks, because it's clearly like somewhere in South Africa, but they, CG it up and whatever. The Lawmaster's been redesigned, which is Dredd's iconic motorcycle. The armor now looks practical, like it could actually stop a bullet, which is great. The Lawgiver's been redesigned, so it's a practical firing weapon that could exist. I've seen people, I actually know a guy, he's a very well-known streamer, I'm not going to say who he is, but has a very good Dredd cosplay, like professional level cosplay.
Well, the Lawgiver is just a Glock 17.
That's what I thought. I thought it was like a 17 or maybe a like 18. I think the original one was like a SIG or something. But yeah, like it looks great, and so much of this works because it's not about ego, it's about telling an interesting story, which is basically two people versus the world, more or less. It's basically the Raid, but with Judge Dredd characters, and that's, I'm in. I'm really in.
And Mama and drugs and
oh god, and you know there's one interchange at the end of the movie that sums up the plot. It's such a simple plot. One judge says, "What happened in there?" Judge Dredd says, "Drug bust. Looks like you've been through it. Perps were uncooperative." And he just walks away. That's the movie. You don't need anything more, because this is Aaron giving a clap to this movie.
Yeah.
I don't know why
it's RoboCop. He's basically RoboCop, but fully human.
Yeah, and I love almost every single aspect of this movie. Like some of the slow-mo, okay, but like I love the set design. I love the costume design. Carl Urban is a treasure in this movie. I love the shots of the Mega City. Even though they don't look like the comic book, it doesn't matter. It gives you the feel of what the comic book should be.
Yeah.
In real life.
His line delivery, I'll take his "I'm the law" over Stallone's meme-worthy version any day, right?
Oh yeah. I love
everybody was expecting like he's gonna go, "I'm the law." No, he wasn't gonna do that. When he delivers it, it gave chills.
Yeah,
versus, you know what I mean? You're not the law. I'm the law.
The other
whoa, okay.
The other thing that was in this movie is like all the guns. See, I'm talking to Mike here because I'm sure Mike was looking at all the guns.
Yep.
The guns are interesting because they're very close to, well, they're almost all real life guns, and one actually kind of shocked me on my rewatch because I swore that it was a Walther P-38 from World War II.
So someone's firing fucking Megatron at people.
Well, yeah, go and see if you can find it. It is in this movie, but it's actually like a 1960s copy of it where they switched out the frame, so it wasn't like steel, it was an aluminum frame now. But it looks exactly like an old World War II Walther P-38. But the point is that like the guns look real, even though they're advanced, but that's okay. This is supposed to be the future. And I'll take this minigun sequence over the original, like the Judge Dredd 95 block war scene any day of the week.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Well, everything here has weight to it. Every bullet, you feel it. Like they fire, it's like, oh man, like there is a consequence for every action. There's not a wasted bullet. Whereas
everything pays off. Everything pays off in this movie.
you've got all that there. You know, they work in the whole psychic aspect. There's just you feel the claustrophobia. You're claustrophobic, but at the same time, it's such a giant building, but it can still feel closed in.
Yeah.
So it's so well put together. Uh, Fun fact: when this movie came out, I recognized the actor. I recognize Urban, right? And right around this time is when he started doing, he was in the Star Trek stuff and all that. But in my head, whenever I saw his name, I was like, the singer.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I didn't. I thought they were the same person. And I was like, oh, very, very different people.
Yeah, like there's just so much about Dredd 2012 that works. Like it's delivered very passionately, very earnestly. Lena Headey, she was doing Game of Thrones. This was different than her character on there, whose name I can't even remember anymore. Cersei. This was different. This was vicious. There's one line where someone says, "Oh yeah, so she used to be a prostitute and then she feminized them with her teeth." And I'm thinking, "Oh boy." And again, one thing
that too.
Yeah,
Dude,
like
that's right. To what Aaron had said, sorry.
Mhm.
There is humor here, but the humor is subtle, dark, and hits different.
Yeah.
When if you do find something funny in here, it was there on purpose. It's not an accidental laugh or an accidental chuckle or a smile. It's there, but everything in this, if you feel kind of gross that you're like, oh man, this world is the way it is, and it's messed up. Even the portrayals of like how the drug addicts are, the hacker, the nerdy hacker dude. That's
Mhm.
like it's not just a case of, oh, he's used and then killed off. It's he experiences the horror of what he's done or what he's been forced to do working for them.
Mhm.
Like how his reaction to all the death and all the horrible things around him that he's being forced to do, basically being run by these drug lords, right? So there is a weight, and you feel the emotions of everything here, and then there will be like a moment or two of where you have a bit of a grin of like dark humor involved.
Yeah, like one thing that I really appreciate about this is one thing that isn't really hinted about outside. Well, kind of yes and no. In Judge Dredd in the 95 version, they run into the Angel Clan, which is a family of mutants from the cursed earth. In Judge Dredd, mutants are very much a part of the population, but they're not always looking like Junior, or they're all weird and fucked up. Some mutants have psychic abilities. In the role-playing games, for example, there's been like 4 of them. They outline mutants, like people who have psychic abilities, people who may be able to spit toxic stuff, just unusual abilities, not quite like the X-Men level of exceptional power, but strange stuff like that. So I was really happy for that. Also, robots are very common in Judge Dredd. They have sentience, they have rights. There are literal furries, like anthropomorphic animals. There's like even characters that are like animals. I think even some animals have become judges in the comics. I'm not 100% sure, but it's an interesting world. And here they give you just enough of the wider sense of the world of Dredd. Like hell, there's even a sign. I think it's a reference to the fatties that I mentioned before. There's the bigger gentleman in the apartment eating, and I'm thinking, okay, that's probably a subtle nod to it. But even looking at some of the graffiti, some of the stuff in the shops, when you get to Control, which is where the judges operate out of the Hall of Justice, there's all this stuff going on the little screens. And again, I'm looking through it, saying, okay, what Easter eggs can I find? There's a lot of love and dedication put here, but it adds to the atmosphere, because now movies were starting, when it comes to Easter eggs, I feel like things were starting, like if they're there for love purposes, because I think Marvel again really changed how a lot of that worked if it came to like really nerdy shit, and this clearly worked. And I know when they were talking about the sequel, and I'm glad, because there was talk about it for a while. Obviously, it didn't happen, but there were talk about adapting some of the later storylines. Like they wanted to do Judge Death, which I think would be a terrible fucking idea, considering how grounded this movie feels compared to the 95 one. Could you do Judge Death in 95? Maybe. And
you know what? You know how corporate things are getting now and how everybody wants to milk everything. Somebody's going to invest money and they're going to say, we're going to do a sequel, but we're going to do a multiverse and it's going to be both Dredds. We're going to have an old man Stallone working with Urban, and they're going to have to culture clash, and they're going to be trying to arrest each other, and everybody's going to it's going to make no money, and they're going to scratch their heads and say, well, I guess it's not a popular property.
yeah, and it's kind of terrifying because one thing I'm actually really, really glad you mentioned Old Man Dredd, because one thing in the comics from 2000 AD that I know they do, Judge Dredd ages in real time. So he started out in like the 70s, Aaron, right? 70s or early 80s?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so now he's aged considerably and he's had genetic re-enhancement. I think he's even had like a clone body or something like that. But Judge Dredd knows he's not going to be around forever. So, and they even touch upon the multiverse because I mentioned Judge Death. Judge Death is from a different world where law is interpreted different, and evidently the ultimate crime is life, because if you are alive you can commit crimes, and well, if you're dead you can't. So it's an interesting concept, but it doesn't work in the world of Dredd 2012 because it is so granted. Could you introduce the more fantastical elements, obviously with Judge Anderson with her being psychic? Yes. Could you get away with an anthropomorphic gorilla? Probably not. Could you get away with the cyborg? As you mentioned, the nerdy hacker with his like Geordie LaForge eyes. Yes, you could absolutely do that. And then you could work up to the weirder stuff. Like maybe they go to Luna 1, they go up to the Mars colony, or they do something in the cursed Earth. There are possibilities there. And Dredd lays a fine foundation, but it's wonderful in the regards that it does work as a standalone. This is my statement on the Dredd universe. If it gets sequelized, it doesn't matter because it doesn't need to.
Yeah, exactly. And 2000 AD has had, I think annual crossovers with their comics for decades now.
Oh yeah.
But I do think, I don't know if it was going to be connected, but I do believe at one point, and it might still be in pre-production, they were trying to do Rogue Trooper, which was one of the other few that I think made it somewhat like Dredd is the biggest comic to come from them, from that publication here. But I believe Rogue Trooper was like number 2 as far as popularity.
Yep.
So, I mean, we still could see that, and I think the time has passed for crossovers. I think we're and for multiverses. I think Deadpool Wolverine, put a pin in that. It's like we're done.
Yeah, because like if you're gonna do it, you have to do it right. And Judge Dredd has crossed over. He's been with Batman. He's been with Spawn. He's fought xenomorphs. There's been all sorts of crazy crossovers, and they're done interesting. Hell, like one of the weirdest crossovers I ever saw was Aliens, Terminator, and Predator all in the same universe.
And anything in the 90s that Archie Comics had.
Yeah, I actually read Archie versus the Punisher. I've read Archie versus the Predator. And I know at some point this year, Predator kills the Marvel Universe. So there's weird stuff going on. With Dredd, I'm trying to think if there's any character I'd like to see him cross over that he hasn't crossed over with. Yeah, there's nobody in Marvel, like, outside of maybe the Punisher, and I want to say even they've had a team up at one point, but I don't know. But like I said, I definitely remember Batman and Judge Dredd where they go after Judge Death and the Joker and all this crazy shit.
And like, for anybody listening, we haven't gone into the plot because Aaron basically summed it up the way they summed it up in the movie.
It's a drug bust gone bad. What do you want?
It's a drug bust gone bad with lots of explosions, cool special effects, the idea of, we should maybe touch a point on slow-mo. Like the actual drug is neat in that they did a really good job of visualizing the effect that it would have. Usually when you see in movies, you're like, think about a movie where for the last 50 years, anytime somebody smokes pot, what do? They give it
fucking
funny
idiot.
colors, even though that's not what happens. The closest thing you see in a movie when somebody smokes pot, if it's actually realistic, is you might see sort of like a tunnel effect where you have like wavy lines or
time
like
feels weird, or gravity feels
time feels weird, or maybe they'll blur the outside edges of the vision of the screen and maybe make it pulsate a little bit. It's like that's really what happens. But in this, the visualization of slow-mo, realizing that and poetically how they kill people is it slows time in within the person's perception down while giving you the feeling of euphoria. And I just love the idea that what's taking 1 second to kill the bad guy, they're living through like maybe an hour of agony in their own head, which is like, whoa.
Oh yeah, like when you talk about like kind of slow-mo visually, I think they say in the movie you perceive time at 0.1% of how the brain fires. So you're perceiving it in that really unusual time. Like there's a drug bust where Anderson and Dredd kick down a drug den. Everybody's dead in like 10 seconds, whereas the two drug addicts are watching this far. They're watching the explosive ripple from the breach charge throw a guy across the room. They're shooting a guy in the face, watching the bullet impact and the ripple of the bullet's kinetic energy ripple across the flesh. That's intense. And obviously, Mama commands her clan to skin 3 guys, give them a hit of slow-mo, and then throw them off a 200-story apartment building. And then they feel everything on the way down.
That's a long fall when you're doing it less than 1% of the speed of what's actually happening in your head. The idea with slow-mo is if you're having a good time, you're having a great time. If you're having a bad time, it's an eternity.
Yeah, like it's really sadistic. I was actually, when I was watching it today, I was thinking I could see why this drug would be so abused. I mean, imagine, this mixed with, Mama's former profession as a prostitute, right? Like the sex trade
the idea, right?
Infinitely, yeah.
Well, also they'll think about the use of how they could cut it, right? They could go, okay, well, let's say opioids, right? As an example, a real world issue. Well, what if you could take a fraction of the opioid where you don't have to worry about overdosing, you don't have to do anything like that. You're taking something that maybe now has a half-life of 10 minutes instead of hours, or potentially having problems with your respiratory. What if you cut it with slow-mo, even though the actual effect on the body is a short period of time, you could maybe experience euphoria for 12 hours in your own head.
Yeah.
Well, then think about how you're going to price that. They're going to want that hit even more because it'll feel like 12 hours, it's over. And then you go, oh, wait, I still have the pain because it hasn't actually dulled it for more than like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So you could see why it's become an epidemic because, a real proper, drug or medication that is supposed to help you, it will help you over a long period of time. But these drug dealers, what they want it to be super crazy effective for as short a period as possible.
Yeah.
And that's what slow-mo is, right?
Mm-hmm. Like it's neat. It looks cool. I even want to say they use a different type of camera to film it, where it's something like 4,000 frames a second. It's something ridiculous.
They put some sort of like scintillating polarization on it as well.
Yeah,
they seeing this in 3D, it didn't look.
Yeah, they color shifted it. They did one of those fast cameras. They also did a really good job of making the visual tell the audience how you would probably feel taking it.
Yeah. And even sound kind of slows down too. Again, it's a really neat visual and audio effect. And probably one of the most effective uses I've ever seen of a drug in a movie. It's really, really cool.
I have one question for you guys. I was trying to figure it out as I was watching it. Does he use every type of bullet and mode that the gun can do?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I think so.
I was okay. I was going to say I wasn't sure if he actually showed off everything that was supposed to be. So it is, I guess, comic accurate to like show off everything it could do, because I wasn't sure if everything was able to make it into the movie, or if there were anything. Is there any notes that you guys know of from the being the gun guys, if you know anything about them? That
I like the fact he actually makes reloads a real issue. When they get locked in, he says to Anderson, we need to conserve ammo because the lawgivers can only hold like 25 rounds at most, and there's the specialty ammo as well. It isn't until the evil judges show up do they get any extra mags, because they take them off the bodies of the dead judges. One thing I really like about that particular fight scene when he's fighting the evil judges is Dredd gets hurt. Like, not Sylvester Stallone, who I have a few cuts and bruises. No, he gets shot, and he has to use biofoam, which is something I first saw this in Halo ODST, but I'm sure it's in other science fiction properties as well, where he seals his wound. He's like, this is going to be enough to let me limp to the hospital, but I'm not 100% combat effective. And
basically
I like
cauterize the wound and stop the bleeding.
yeah, basically like make sure the cavity doesn't fill with blood so I don't bleed out or whatever. That's really cool. And again, making sure all the ammo types are used. They're not just firing off 10,000 rounds for the sake of funsies. Ammo's a real concern. And they really, like, when they pick up their like lawgivers, it checks the DNA on them. They use that to great effect in this as well. It's really well done. Like, I have no notes in this other than I wish I got more of this.
Well, I mean, the movie, like you said, it's a drug bust gone wrong, but it's really just like a driver's ed test.
Yeah,
pass or fail, right? Like this is supposed to be a run of the mill. I'm taking you out. I'm taking you out on a ride along. This is like halfway between a ride along, a driver's ed test, and just to see how you react in the world. And at the end, it's just pass or fail. that's because it brings you back to let you know, like, well, that's right. This movie didn't start out like this. This was supposed to be a nothing day.
Yeah, like it's just day in the life of, and as the movie ends, one of the judges comes up to Dredd and goes, "Well, is she a pass?" And she's already handed in her badge, realizing, I don't know if I want to do this anymore, but she becomes a very important character in the comics later. And he looks at
lost
her
her helmet. If you
lost
remove
her
your
gun.
helmet,
Yep,
and lost your gun, that's automatic fail, right?
yep.
It
And
should be.
and incorrect sentencing too. Yeah,
Oh, that's right.
you're
Yeah.
Yeah, so she failed multiple times, but Dredd saw she has what it takes. She has the grit to do it, and he looks at her and goes, "She's a pass." And that's
But
not
also,
in his character.
I was going to say, does that show that he has strayed from his sternness, or was that always the intent? Right. So
I think that was always his intent, because I mean he's very strict, but he also knows that you have to be able to shift and sway while in the shit, so to speak.
Without saying anything to he doesn't know who else in the department is corrupt.
Mm-hmm.
He has to assume that it could be anybody at this point when he sees this many, and he'll see her and be like, well, this one's not a bad egg. This one I know I can trust.
Yeah.
To basically uphold the law, whereas everybody else, he doesn't know anybody else he could be talking to could be corrupt at this point.
Yeah. And I think in the comics, I'm pretty sure it's Judge Anderson. They become very, very good friends, and I think Anderson becomes the Chief Justice at the end of one of the runs of the comic. So again, it looks great. I really like the actress they picked. I think her name is Olivia Thilby or something like that. She's cute, but whatever. But watching her through this, I was kind of thinking, I'm probably alone in this. If you gave her red hair and a little bit of more hands-on firearms training, give her a couple years, I wouldn't mind seeing her as a live-action Commander Shepard. Personally.
I thought you were going to say Black Widow. I'm like, she's... No, but yeah.
I could see Widow too, actually.
I mean...
But not
every time we met... every time you mention, Mass Effect movie, I get worried about what's going to happen with it, but we'll see. I could totally see that. I think the casting was good, mostly unknowns. I think outside of, Lena Headey was big already at this point with Game of Thrones.
And Terminator.
Oh, that's right, because I think the show had
Sarah
just
Connor.
ended, right?
Yep.
Yep. Underrated show, in my opinion.
Same here.
Yes.
I love that show.
Yeah, with one of the worst cliffhanger endings ever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say good casting. I think this is one of the few cases where even though the movie wasn't successful initially, word of mouth spread, and I think it made its money in the rental, like in the latter era of the dying blockbuster days. But as far as when Blu-rays were still really popular with the mainstream to purchase, I remember this being sold like at every store. It was always a pretty big seller for like the last 10 years. Both the 3D version, it was sort of a featured showcase for people that had 3D television sets, that, the few people that did. And as far as like the regular edition, I think this is kind of like in the last 10, 15 years been one of the go-tos when somebody's like, I want to watch an action movie, but I don't want to watch like an old, in quotes, one, especially with like the younger generation. This is one of the ones that holds up better than a lot of the action stuff today. You could put this in a double feature with like any of the John Wick movies, and it fits right in now. It doesn't matter that it was 13 years ago. It could fit in. It's almost like it was a little ahead of its time in the way it was shot. And also, big praise. I'll say this as my final thought on the film. It was in the middle, maybe to the latter end, but in the middle of the era of the stupid close-up shaky cam, and this didn't have it. This showed us everything. So made me happy.
What are your final thoughts, Aaron?
I love the movie. I have very little that I can criticize it for. Like I said, everything that is set up in the movie pays off, often multiple times. When you think like it's done, no, it's coming back, and it's even cooler than before. The acting is great, the pacing is great, the visuals are great. Carl Urban is a treasure, as I said earlier. I don't know. I wore out one Blu-ray watching this.
And you know how rare that is. They're pretty resilient. They're more resilient than DVDs. That meant you watched it a fair bit. Like when I had it too, it was one of the first. I had one of the first Blu-rays that I got that I was consistently pulling out for friends and family that hadn't seen it, because again, it really wasn't seen by very many people in theaters. It wasn't notorious for being a flop. It was one of those movies that just came out and nobody watched. But it wasn't so like, this isn't a Borderlands movie, right? Where it's so bad that becomes the narrative. It was like, no, this was one of those great movies that nobody watched.
Yeah, like for my final thoughts on this, it is actually one of my comfort movies. This, Aliens, and RoboCop. Dredd is a movie I watched a lot when I was in the hospital, when I had my amputation. But it's also a movie that I go back and watch when I'm like, this is something that was made with love. This is something where I am absorbed into the world. And for that hour and 40 minutes or however long it is, I'm there with Anderson. I'm there with Dredd. And it is really absorbing. And there are very few movies that really do that to me. That's Transformers 1986. That is RoboCop. That's Aliens. Maybe The Fifth Element might be another one that's a comfort movie for me. And Dredd does everything it possibly can. Would I like to see a sequel at some point? Yes. But if this is the only time I get to visit Mega City 1 with the way it feels, then I'm okay. I've got the role-playing games for this. I've got the comics. I've got multiple video games. Maybe we'll get our own version of Judge Dredd Rogue City or something like that. It'd be great to see a good Judge Dredd video game. The ones we have gotten have been pretty terrible. And as of right now, no one has the license for the Judge Dredd role-playing game. It used to belong to Rebellion under EN Publishing, which is the Wine system, what's old is new again. And it wasn't a bad system, but if you can find this game, go out there and look. There was like a Games Workshop one. There was Mongoose Publishing. It's a worthwhile property to really look into. And 2000 AD is a very strange world, but it's very, very good. So, guys, that's going to do it for this edition of Future Imperfect. As we might say, you have been judged. What's going to come up next on the show? We're not entirely sure yet, but we will be sure to advertise it on our socials. Be sure to check us out on Blue Sky, where we are exclusively posting. There might be the odd thing that shows up on Twitter because auto posting is just kind of the way it is.
Basically, we'll be auto posting to X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. Just because it's another place to go to. But if you want to interact, and we will check it occasionally, but if you want to interact with us, Blue Sky is the better method. That hit us up on Facebook, emails, feedback, This Week in Geek, all those fun things. But yeah, generally, for the most part, we're on Blue Sky now.
Exactly. All right, guys. So for this week in Geek from the Cursed Earth, we have been.
I'm Aaron
Alex,
Pollyea.
the producer. Both of us.
Yeah, both of you are from the Cursed Earth. From the mega city block of Kitchener.
Alex, the producer.
And from, that's right, guys, the Hall of Justice in Guelph, I have been Mike the Birdman saying, you have been judged.
Anderson, your assessment's now over.
When I heard you called in at 10:24, I thought I'd better check it out. Seems I forced the rookie on you. So what happened in there?
Drug bust.
Looked like you've been through it.
Perps were uncooperative.
So how did she do? She a pass or a fail?
She's a pass.
Knew she would be.
One shall stand, one shall fall. Why throw away your life so recklessly? That's a question you should ask yourself, Megatron.
We came, we saw, we kicked its ass.
That's right, Mr. Peabody.
Quiet, you.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.
You don't understand.
I do. I understood that reference.
Mission successful. Shutting down.
You know, I never understood that. Why did you judge me? Why did you judge me?
You killed innocent people.
The means to an end.
You started a massacre.
I caused the revolution.
You betrayed the law.
Law!